In this video, we're going to talk about how to set up a Samba share off of a Linux machine. Now, a Samba share, if you're not familiar with it, is essentially a Windows file share. So Windows file shares are probably something you have used quite a bit. You've used them in corporate environments where maybe you have a file server that hosts all of the files necessary for your group. Maybe there's a personal home folder that hosts all of your files. Or maybe you've used it for sharing files between friends, sharing documents or something along those lines. So Windows file share is what's called Samba. Under the Linux environment. So I went ahead and I just Googled specifically for Centos7 because I want to see about how to set up a Samba environment under Centos7. Specifically because I have both a Centos7 and a Windows server in my test lab. That's the perfect example that I'm able to then set it up on my CentOS machine and then access it from, set it up on my CentOS, from my CentOS to Windows. So that allows me to have a Windows machine accessing a Linux machine to use it as its own file share. So I went ahead and I just Googled for this, and I've looked through here pretty briefly, and I'm liking this second set of directions right here. So that's the one I'm going to on techmint.com. And when I click on that, it's going to these instructions right here, how to install Samba 7 or Samba 4 for CentOS7. And so these are the steps I'm going to go ahead and jump through here. So first off, let me get into my virtual machine. There we go. We've got our CentOS machine. And I actually have the instructions open on another window. Feel free to go back to that URL. The URL is, let's see if I can zoom on up here, techmint.com/install Samba 4 on CentOS7 for file sharing on Windows. There you go. So into my Linux machine, I'm going to start off by opening up a terminal. Everything runs under terminals. It is so great. And I'm just going to start off with a sudo yum clean. First thing I want to do is make sure that the local catalog is clean and up to date. Repos update. Okay. Then I'm going to do sudo yum install Samba, Samba-client, and Samba-common. There we go. So now it's downloading the latest catalog, and then from the latest catalog, it will go ahead and install those packages. Do I want to install this? Yes. All right, so that went ahead and completed. That was great. I was a little concerned there. It gave me some 404 messages, but it seems to have resolved itself. Next thing I want to do, according to the instructions, is because this is a network resource or a resource that's accessed over the network, I need to open up the firewall on this CentOS machine. By default, most Linux machines block all traffic. Imagine that. So in order to fix that, I need to use the firewall-cmd command, and I want to make a permanent change. Oops. Excuse me there. Let's try that again. Sudo firewall-cmd whack permanent -- zone equals public, add add service equals Samba. And that will add and open up all the firewall ports necessary for Samba to be able to work. Lastly, sudo firewall -cmd -reload to allow those changes to take effect immediately. Alright, so according to the instructions, next thing I need to do is find out exactly which workgroup my server is in, my Windows server. So for that, I'm going to click on my Windows machine, and here we see my Windows machine. I click on local server, and that should tell me here under server manager, my workgroup is in fact workgroup. Hey, imagine that. The workgroup is workgroup. That's the default setting. If you're in an organization that has a domain or a workgroup that's different, you'll have to tag that. So back to my Linux machine, and now we can go ahead and start configuring our Samba. Very first thing we want to do is we want to back up the configuration file. There is already a sample Samba configuration file, and it's in etsy/samba/smb.conf, and I want to copy that to etsy/samba/smb.conf.original or .org. That just means if I mess up, I can revert back to the original. Then, well, if we're going to create a file share, then we have to have a location to share the files from. So let's go ahead and make a directory. Make dir -p. P means make all of these subdirectories. /srv/samba/anonymous. So there is currently no SRV directory. Under that, there is currently no Samba directory, and under that, there is no anonymous directory. This -p right here means create first the SRV directory, then the Samba, and then anonymous. So it will create all of them for us. Otherwise, we have to do that in 3 different steps. Just to make sure, we can do an ls/srv samba, and there's our new anonymous directory. Next thing we need to do is change the permissions. So sudo chmod -r, capital R for recursive. Make the permissions 775. So read, write, execute, and read, execute for anonymous or for other. /srv/samba/anonymous. Tab complete comes in really handy there. And then chown -r nobody : nobody. There is actually a user called nobody on your server. You've never really seen it before because you've never had to deal with it. So this file, this directory is now owned by nobody, has permissions so that most everybody can be able to access it. Very last thing we need to do is set up SELinux. Now we haven't had to deal with SELinux very much, thankfully. It's a great tool, but if you're just learning, it gets a little confusing. But basically what we do is we are defining this folder as a type of a Samba share. So that means that this folder and everything under it is of a type of Samba share, and therefore a Samba activity or file share activity can access it without issue. So our directories are now set up. Next thing we need to do is configure our actual Samba file. So for that, we need to sudo vi /etsy/samba/smb.conf. We want to edit the configuration file, not the copy that we made. The copy is just a backup. So we go ahead and we edit the configuration file. Right here up at the very top, we can see that we have a workgroup specified, which defaults to Samba. We would need to change that to workgroup. Excuse my really bad handwriting there. And then we also want to add a Netbios name so that this machine can be found easily. So I'm going to go ahead and get here to the workgroup line, go into insert mode, change workgroup to workgroup. And again, that's workgroup is just because that's what my Windows machine is at. If your Windows machine is in a workgroup called test, then your workgroup here would be test as well. Additionally, I want to put in another line here called Netbios space name. And that's just the friendly name that we'll call this machine on the network. For now, I'll call that CentOS. If this was a production environment, I might call this, test file server or HR file server or something along those lines. All of these blocks in here, other than the global, for instance, homes, refers to a home directory or a home share. Same thing with printers. There is a printer share, print dollar share. These are all different shares, and then these guys right next to it are its properties. So now what we want to do is at the very bottom of this list, we want to scroll down and we want to create a new share for our anonymous folder that we just created on the file system. So I'm going to scroll on down, all the way down. Looks like that's the last line. I'll go ahead and hit enter to create a new line. Opening square brackets, anonymous. That's the name of our file share, and then closing bracket. Comment. What kind of friendly comment do we want to put in here? Let's call this anonymous file share. Path. Where is this file? Where is this share on the local file system? That is in /srv /samba /anonymous. Browsable. Is this file share browsable? Yes, it is. Can I see it from the network share? Should I be able to browse to it? Absolutely. Is this writable? Yes. Is a guest user okay? Yes. Is it read only? No. And then force user, I want to force a specific user to be, every time somebody accesses this share, I want to force them to be a specific user, and I want that to be the nobody user. Remember, we created this we created this folder, we assigned permissions to the nobody user. And so now we're gonna force every access to this share as the anonymous user. All right, looking at the notes for the document, and it looks like that's it. So let's go ahead and save that. So escape :WQ for write and quit. And then we want to make sure we didn't do any typos. We want to make sure that configuration file is correct before we start committing it. So we're going to do a command called test parm. This will test the parameters, test the properties in that file that we just edited. And we look through here and it gives us a few details. Let's see, for instance, it says, hey, there's a home section, printers, print, anonymous. Those are all okay. Go ahead and hit enter and it will give a full listing of all of the details that we just typed in. So we hit enter and we see all the shares that we just looked at. All right, so now that that's taken care of, now we need to start these services. There are, actually clear this, there are two services that we need to do. So sudo systemctl enable smb.service. And then same thing, enable nmb.service. There is a difference between the two of them here. I knew that at one time. In the long run, you don't necessarily need to know what the differences are unless you're coding for those two services. But there are two. There's an SMB and an NMB. So we set both of them to enable and then do the same thing for start. We start them right now. So start nmb.service and start smb.service. At that point, our anonymous file share should be set, should be correct. So if I find this guy's IP address, ifconfig, this machine is 192.168.0.2 from my Windows machine. I should be able to browse to 192.168.0.2 and find an anonymous file share. Let's check it out. Here I am at my Windows machine. Let's go ahead and open up I'm just going to go right click on the start menu and say run, and then / 192.168.0.2. And this will take a few seconds the very first time. As things are warming up, they might take a little while. But in a few seconds, I should get a prompt that shows me the file share. Maybe. Otherwise, I could open up just standard File Explorer, and let's see, the instructions in the lab tell me to browse to the network. Oh, there we are. If I just simply browse to network, I can see my network machine right there. Let me double click on CentOS, and that should also present me with the anonymous share. All right, so it is prompting me for credentials, which it should not be doing. Let's try that one more time. Two, and that will probably time out as well. All right, so in theory, that should not be prompting me for credentials. It should be logging me in directly as the anonymous or as the nobody user. We'll see what's going on with that later. Let's assume that that's working. We'll come back to it shortly because that was setting up an anonymous file share. 99% of the time, you're not going to be doing anonymous file shares anyway. The majority of the time, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be creating users and you're going to be granting permissions to users to access your file share. For instance, if you have Joe in HR, you are going to grant Joe access to the HR folder. You're not going to be creating anonymous file shares, which inherently are a bad idea. So with that being said, still prompting for credentials. With that being said, let's go back to our Linux machine and let's actually start creating some users. We'll come back to it. That anonymous share will still be there. What I want to do is I want to create a user called TechMint. It's not specifically spelled out in the directions on the website that we're following. I guess it just assumes that you have a user called TechMint. So sudo user add TechMint. I actually don't need to give him a password. It's funny. There's two different passwords that we'll be dealing with here. One is the Linux password, and then the other is the Samba password. So we've added the user called TechMint. Let's go ahead and create a group called SMB group. And then we'll add TechMint into the SMB group. So sudo usermod TechMint -ag into SMB group. And then this is where the magic comes in. We need to do a sudo SMB password -a for add TechMint. So we're adding an SMB password to the user TechMint. I'll go ahead and give him a password. PASSW0RD. PASSW0R. I misspelled that. PASSW0RD. There we go. So we've created a local user called TechMint. We added him to the SMB group, and then we gave him an SMB password. password. At this point, let's go ahead and create instead of an anonymous file share, let's create a secure file share. So sudo make-dir /s server Samba, and let's call this one secure. Let's change some permissions. chmod-r. Instead of the 775, let's do 770 for the secure share. And then let's change the ownership root to SMB group /server Samba secure. What did I miss? Oh, I missed the chown command. And then lastly, the Selinux command, sudo chcon -t samba _share _t for type. The T right there is the type. /server Samba secure. All right, so we've prepped up the user, we've prepped up the group, we've prepped the file. At this point, we just need to create the share, which is again done by editing that one configuration file. etc samba sudo vi etc samba smb.conf. In this time, I'm just going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, past my anonymous, add in a new line, and we'll call this share secure. We can add in a comment. This is a secure file share. The path is /srv/samba /secure. Valid users. Who can actually access this machine or this file share? It is the @SMB grp. @ means that this is a group. So look in the groups table for something called SMB group. Is guest users okay? In this case, no. This is a secure share. Guest users should not be able to see this. Is it writable? Writable, yes. And is it browsable? Yes. All right, let's save that and then run test parm again just to confirm that everything is okay. And we can see right here, okay. Oh wait, unknown parameter, valid user. I did a typo. It's supposed to be valid users, plural. So let me go back in and edit that file again. This is why we run that test parm command. If I didn't do that, I would have gone all the way through troubleshooting why I couldn't log in, and then it turns out that it was a small little typo. There we go. So everything's okay. No errors whatsoever. We can go ahead and view the full configuration. And now we're ready to look at the notes here. Restart SMB and then test our file share. So to restart, we just sudo systemctl restart smb.service. And then up arrow, change SMB to nmb.service. So we just restarted our services. At this point, we should be able to go back to the Windows server, tell it we are the TechMint user, and start browsing along. So let's go back to our run command. There we go. Again, this may take a few seconds for it to come up. This time, when it does prompt us, we can now type in the TechMint user and our password of password. And then we should be able to start browsing our file shares. right, File Explorer's up. We should get the prompt here in just a second. There we go. Okay, so we finally got the prompt. Username we created was TechMint. That password was PASSW0RD. Remember, we didn't actually create a Linux password. We only created a Samba password. So we hit enter, and hopefully, cross our fingers, our file share should show up here. We should see both the anonymous as well as the secure share. There we go. Oh, and apparently a user share. So the secure share, we can come in here. We can just simply right click and say new folder, and a new folder is created. Or right click new. Let's do text document, and a text document is created. This file share is literally creating files on the server, on the Linux server. So if we come back here to the Linux server and we look in the /srv Samba secure folder as root, then we can see, yes, there was our new folder. New folder right there is created, as well as our document right there, and the permissions were applied as appropriate. So the lab had some quirks as far as allowing anonymous users, but that's perfectly fine because 99% of the time you're not going to be doing anonymous users in your environment. If I was specifically looking to do anonymous users, I would then be further Googling to see, what steps I might have missed and how to make anonymous work. Samba, by default, you don't want anonymous. However, when we then created users, we were able to go ahead and give them access, grant them access to this share. At this point, I could see sudo touch server Samba srv Samba secure hello.txt. I can create these files in the Linux machine and then view them on the Windows machine as well. So back and forth, not a problem.